There exist 5 questions that, the moment someone asks you one of them, you must refuse to answer. Not because you lack kindness, not because you distrust others, but because answering them, and most people do without a second thought, throws open a door that welcomes poverty directly into your life. And once that door is ajar, closing it again is no simple task. I know this sounds intense, but stay with me, for what I'm about to share with you is rooted in thousands of years of Jewish wisdom. Wisdom passed quietly from mother to daughter, from rabbi to student, in hushed conversations around kitchen tables and in the hidden corners of synagogues. Not inscribed in grand books for all to read, but taught only to those ready to receive it, and today I am sharing it with you. There are certain questions that carry what our tradition calls an ayin hara, an evil eye, a force of destruction, and when you answer them carelessly, you expose the most sacred parts of your life to energies that deplete, drain, and destroy. Money ceases to flow. Opportunities vanish. Things that were thriving suddenly begin to unravel. And people spend years wondering why. Today I will reveal exactly what those 5 questions are, why answering them invites poverty according to our deepest teachings, and what you should say instead. By the time we're done, you will never view these questions the same way again. Let me begin by sharing something I often reflect on. I grew up in a Jewish community in Buenos Aires. My grandmother, my bubby Esther, was one of those women who seemed to know things others didn't. She had endured hardships I can barely bring myself to speak aloud. She had lost almost everything, twice, and yet every single time she rebuilt. She always had enough. Her home always felt abundant. Even in difficult times, people would ask her what her secret was. She would simply smile and say, "I know what not to say." As a child, I found that answer strange. What did not saying something have to do with having money? I didn't understand. Not until I was much older. Not until I began studying seriously and discovered these same ideas, the ones my bubby lived by, written in our sacred texts, explained by our greatest sages, and practiced by Jewish families across centuries and continents. And what I found stunned me, for the pattern was undeniable. The families that sustained wealth across generations, not just one fortunate generation, but enduring prosperity through wars, exile, and economic collapse, had something in common. It wasn't just hard work. It wasn't just intelligence. It was a discipline of speech, a set of rules about what to guard with silence. And at the heart of those rules are 5 questions that no one in those families would ever answer directly. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. You work hard. You try to be responsible. You save when you can. You pray. You do everything right. And yet it feels as though there's a leak somewhere, as if money comes in but never stays, as if every time things start looking up, something pulls you back down. If that resonates with you, I want you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to share, because there's a strong chance that one of these 5 questions is part of the reason why. Not the only reason, but a part of it. Today, I will walk you through all 5. I will explain the teaching behind each one, the stories that illustrate their importance, and exactly what to do instead. This is ancient wisdom, and it works. I have seen it work in my own life and in the lives of those I love. So let's begin. The first question you must never answer is this: how much do you earn? I know it seems simple, even harmless. Someone asks, you tell them, what's the issue? Here's the issue. And I want you to understand this not as superstition, but as a profound spiritual law. In the Talmud, in Tractati Bava Batra, the sages teach extensively about lashon hara, harmful speech, and its connection to prosperity. But there's a deeper teaching tied to this. It stems from the principle that what is spoken aloud becomes accessible to forces beyond your control. When you declare the exact measure of your income to someone who hasn't earned the right to know it, you're not just sharing information. You're inviting comparison, envy, and judgment into what our tradition calls your parnasa, your divinely allotted sustenance. The Talmud teaches in Tractate Bava Batra that a person should never count their money in front of others unnecessarily. The rabbis connected this to the story of Joseph and his brothers. Do you recall what happened? Jacob loved Joseph openly, gave him the famous coat of many colors, and spoke freely about how much he favored him. That open declaration of abundance summoned envy so powerful it nearly destroyed an entire family. Joseph ended up in a pit, sold into slavery. The visible, announced favor became a target. Now, you might say, well, that was a different time. But let me tell you about something that happened in my own family. My cousin Raphael, a brilliant man, started a small business importing textiles. For years he was private, discreet, careful. The business grew. Then, one day at a family dinner, someone asked him directly, "So, how much are you making now? Give us a number." And Raphael, proud and excited, told them. He told the whole table. Within 3 months, he had 3 family members asking for loans he couldn't refuse, a business partner who suddenly felt entitled to more, and a tax inspector who showed up at his door based on, as far as he could tell, a tip from someone who knew too much. The first question you must never answer directly is how much you earn. What do you say instead? Something simple and true. Baruch Hashem, we have what we need. Blessed be God, we have what we need, not more, not less. You redirect with gratitude, you close the door politely, and in doing so, you shield what you have from the eyes that might diminish it. But here's what most people overlook. This isn't just about protecting yourself from envious people, it's about your own relationship with your abundance. Every time you reduce your livelihood to a number and hand it to someone who asked out of curiosity or comparison, you participate in shrinking it. You make it smaller than it is. You turn it into a competition rather than a blessing. Stop doing that. Your parnasa is between you and God. Guard it like the sacred thing it is. Now, pay close attention, because the second question is one that almost everyone answers without thinking, and it may be the most dangerous of all. The second question you must never answer is this: how much do you have saved? Let me share a story from the Torah that most people read as history, but our sages interpret as instruction. In Genesis 26, Isaac is living among the Philistines during a famine. The land is barren. Everyone is struggling. And yet, the Torah tells us that Isaac sowed in that land and reaped 100-fold that year. God had blessed him. His flocks grew. His herds multiplied. His household thrived. And then the Torah says something that should give every one of us pause. The Philistines envied him. And what happened next? The king ordered him to leave. The wells his father Abraham had dug were stopped up by his enemies. Everything that had been flowing was blocked. The Ramban, the great medieval commentator, points out that Isaac's problem wasn't that he was blessed. His problem was that his blessing became visible to those who had no part in creating it. His wealth was seen. It was counted by outside eyes, and once it was counted by those eyes, it became a target. What does this mean for you today? It means this. When someone asks you how much you have saved, whether it's a neighbor, a cousin, a co-worker, or even a close friend, the answer is never a number. Never. Not because you're ashamed, not because you're hiding something dishonest, but because your savings are a seed in the ground, and seeds exposed before they're ready to sprout get eaten by birds. There's a beautiful teaching in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers. Who is rich? One who is satisfied with his portion. This isn't just about contentment, It's about not making your portion the subject of public examination. The moment you put a number on what you've saved and hand it to someone who didn't ask out of genuine love for your well-being, you've invited judgment into that number, and judgment blocks growth. I had a neighbor, a good woman, Devora. She worked for 20 years as a nurse. She was careful with money her whole life, not rich, but steady, solid. And one afternoon at a community gathering, she was talking with some women, and someone asked directly, "After all these years, do you have enough set aside?" And Devora, proud of her discipline, said yes, and told them the amount. Within a year, she had a son who needed help with a failed business, a sister who needed a loan for medical bills, and a request from her community for a larger contribution than she could comfortably give. She never recovered those savings. The money didn't disappear because bad things happened. Bad things happened to everyone. The money disappeared because it became common knowledge. Once everyone knows what you have, everyone feels they have a relationship with it. What do you say when someone asks how much you have saved? You say, "I'm working on building something for my family's future." You say, "I have what I need for now." You say, "Baruch Hashem," and you smile. You are not lying. You are protecting. This next one changed my life when I finally understood it, because I used to answer this question all the time, and I had no idea what it was doing to me. The third question you must never answer is this: what are your plans for that money? Stay with me, because this is where it gets profound. There's a concept in Kabbalah discussed at length in the Zohar about the difference between what is formed in the spiritual realm and what is manifested in the physical world. The Zohar teaches that a blessing, before it becomes real in your hands, exists first in what we might call a potential form. It's real, but it's delicate. And like all delicate things, premature exposure can damage it before it takes full shape. When someone asks you, "What are you going to do with that money?" and you answer, when you describe your plans in detail to someone who didn't need to know, you're releasing something that hadn't finished forming yet. You're letting the air out before the bread has finished rising. Let me tell you about a man named Solomon, not the biblical king, though you'll see the connection in a moment. This was a man in my community in Israel, a builder. He had been saving for years to start his own construction company. He had a plan, a real plan, carefully thought out. And one evening at a Shabbat dinner, someone around the table asked him what he was planning to do with all the money he had been putting away. And Solomon, full of excitement, full of hope, laid it all out: the business model, the location, the timeline, the projected income. 3 people at that table immediately had opinions. One said it would never work in that market. One offered to be a partner in a way that didn't feel right, but was hard to refuse. And one, meaning well, mentioned it to someone who then approached the same supplier Solomon had been planning to use, and got there first. The business he had been planning for 5 years never happened. Now, was it the telling that caused it? I can't prove a direct line. But our tradition teaches something very clear. The Talmud in Tractate Berakot says, "A person should not show a friend a goblet of blessings." The rabbis were conveying something powerful with that image. You don't display what is meant for you before it has arrived. Plans are not yet blessings. They are seeds. Seeds need darkness and soil, not air and an audience. King Solomon, the real one, writes in Proverbs 17, "One who guards his mouth and tongue guards his soul from trouble." The sages connected this specifically to financial plans and future intentions. The premature announcement of what you plan to do with resources invites both human interference and spiritual disruption. What do you say instead? You say, "I'm being guided by what feels right for my family." You say, "I'm still figuring it out." You say nothing, and you smile with the secret weight of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. This is what my bubby Esther used to do. People would ask her about her plans, and she would just look at you with those quiet eyes and say, "God knows." Not dismissive, not rude, just protected. This is so crucial because this one practice, learning to keep your financial plans close until they are done, not just decided, has protected more wealth in more Jewish families than almost anything else I can name. But here's what I need to tell you now, because it builds on everything I've already said, and it may be the one that surprises you the most. The fourth question you must never answer is this: are you doing well financially right now? This one is tricky because it feels like such a normal social question. People ask it out of care. They ask it at family dinners, after a hard year, after a job change, after a move. So how are things going? Are you doing okay financially? And most people answer honestly, yes, actually things are really good right now. Or things are a bit tight, but we're managing. Both answers are dangerous. Let me explain why. In the Mishnah, in Tractate Avot chapter 2, there's a teaching attributed to Rabbi Yehoshua. He said that an evil eye, the destructive power of envy and jealousy directed at a person, is worse than many other spiritual dangers combined. The Talmud in Tractate Bava Batra expands on this, teaching that a large percentage of the harm that comes to people does not come from divine decree, but from what the rabbis called ayin, the eye of others, the focused attention of people comparing themselves to you. When you say things are going well and the person asking is in a hard season, you plant a seed of envy that they may not even be aware of feeling. And that envy has a real effect, not because of magic, but because of human nature. The person who now knows you're doing well starts to act differently around you. They tell others. They mentally mark you as someone who has more than they do, and slowly, without anyone meaning to cause harm, you become the target of all kinds of small actions and words that chip away at what you've built. And when you say things are tight, you speak that scarcity into being. You confirm it. You give it weight. You make it more real by announcing it, and people treat you accordingly. The Zohar in Parashat Teruma speaks about how the words we use to describe our own condition have formative power. We are not just reporting reality, we are shaping it with our declarations. This is not New Age thinking. This is Miriam Bat-Yocheved metaphysics, deeply serious, deeply studied. So what do you say when someone asks if you're doing okay financially? You say, "I am grateful for what God has given me." You say, "We manage by God's grace." You say nothing that quantifies or qualifies your financial state to someone who does not absolutely need to know, because no one absolutely needs to know. Not your cousin, not your neighbor, not your co-worker. This information belongs to you, your spouse, your accountant, and God. My own mother taught me this when I was young. She would say, "Never let people see the bottom of your pot." It means, don't let people know exactly how much or how little you have. Both extremes attract problems. Keep the bottom of your pot hidden. This was wisdom she got from her mother, who got it from hers, and now you have it too. We are almost at the final question, and this one might be the hardest for you to hear because it's not about protecting yourself from others, it's about protecting yourself from yourself. The fifth question you must never answer is this: why haven't you done better by now? This question can come from a family member, a parent, a sibling, a spouse who's frustrated, or from a voice inside your own head. And when it comes, most people do one of two things. They either get defensive and make excuses, or they accept the premise of the question and begin to agree with it, and both responses are spiritually and financially devastating. Let me tell you about a teaching from Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, one of the most beloved Chassidic masters who ever lived. Rabbi Nachman taught that simcha, joy, was one of the most powerful principles for restoring a person's connection to God and to their own potential. He taught that you must always find the good in yourself, always, even in moments of failure, even in moments of stagnation. Because the moment you agree that you are fundamentally flawed, that you should have done better but didn't because something is wrong with you, you cut yourself off from the root of blessing. The Talmud in Tractate Shabbat tells us that the divine presence, the Shekinah, rests only on someone who has a joyful heart, not a perfect heart, not a rich heart, a joyful heart. When you accept the accusation embedded in the question, "Why haven't you done better?" you extinguish joy, and when joy goes, so does the Shekinah. And when the Shekinah leaves, Parnassa dries up. This is the chain. This is how it works. I remember sitting with an elderly woman in my community. Her name was Miriam. She had worked hard her whole life. She was in her 70s. And a well-meaning daughter sat across from her and said, "Mama, how did we end up here? Why didn't you save more when you had the chance?" And I watched something happen in Miriam's face. I watched her accept the question. I watched her begin to agree with it. And she spent the next year in a kind of quiet despair, not from poverty, but from the feeling that she had failed. That question, carelessly thrown and carelessly received, did more damage than 1,000 financial mistakes. Here is the truth. The Torah never asks, "Why haven't you done better?" The Torah asks, "Where are you now?" That's the question God asked Adam in the garden. Ayeka, where are you? Not why have you failed, but where are you right now? That is the question worth answering, not to others, but to yourself. Quietly, honestly, and with compassion. When someone asks you why you haven't done better, you do not answer that question. You do not accept its premise. You do not defend yourself against it. You simply say, "I trust in where God has me." And you walk away from that conversation with your spirit intact, because here is what I want you to understand as I bring all of this together. These 5 questions: how much do you earn? How much have you saved? What are your plans for your money? Are you doing well financially? And why haven't you done better? Are all versions of the same invitation. They are invitations to expose what is sacred, to make public what should remain protected, to reduce the mystery of your divine portion to a number, a defense, or an apology. And our tradition, across thousands of years, in teachings that have been tested by fire, exile, loss, and rebuilding, is absolutely clear on this. What you protect, you preserve. What you expose carelessly, you risk losing. This is not superstition. This is spiritual law, as serious and consistent as any law in physics. The families in our community who maintained wealth through generations, the ones I watched growing up, the ones I've studied and loved, did not have extraordinary talent or extraordinary luck. They had an extraordinary discipline of speech. They kept their financial lives private. They answered these 5 questions with gratitude instead of numbers, with God's name instead of specific amounts, with gentle redirection instead of full disclosure. They understood something that our sages taught in Pirkei Avot chapter 3. Rabbi Akiva said, "Beloved is the human being, for they were created in the image of God." And our teachers explained that just as God's work of creation happened in stages, hidden from all eyes until it was complete, so must we protect the stages of our own creation. Our plans, our savings, our progress, these are works in the making. And works in the making must be shielded until they are done. You are a work in the making. Your financial life is a work in the making. And from this day forward, you have the wisdom to protect it the way it deserves to be protected. Your season of scarcity is not a verdict. It is a season, and seasons change, but they change faster when you stop announcing their details to everyone around you and start trusting that what is forming in your life is forming for a reason. in God's time, under God's protection. Stop handing your sacred portion to curious eyes. Stop answering questions that were not asked in love. Stop letting other people's comparisons become the measure of your worth. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the blessing that belongs to you, your chelek, your portion, as our tradition calls it, that blessing has your name on it. No one can take it from you. But you can give it away, little by little, in careless answers to questions that should never have been answered. So let me close by giving you something to carry with you, a practice. Starting today, when someone asks you one of these 5 questions, pause before you answer. Take one breath. And in that breath, remember what you've heard today. Remember that your parnasa is sacred. Remember that what you protect, you preserve, and then give an answer that is true but protected. Baruch Hashem, we have what we need. That is always true, and it is always enough. If what I've shared today has stirred something in you, I want you to go to the comments right now and write these words: My portion is protected.